Reggie Hilliard is here. He's a speaker and author and the creator of the Get Reeducated brand. This is a movement dedicated to unlocking your infinite potential. But most importantly, the reason we're here is to talk about Reggie's debut book. It is called 50 to 100 Infinity Within. It contains 50 quotes, all about 100% achievement, endless potential. It's a collection of bold truths, rhythmic wisdom, and mindset shifting insights designed to awaken the power already encoded within each of us. So if you are one of these people that's ready to rise to the unbreakable heights, to live limitlessly and step fully into your everything, this is exactly the podcast you want to listen to. It's time to get excited, get unblocked, get motivated, get inspired. Mr. Reggie, glad to see you.
Likewise. Thank you for having me on your show.
Happy to have you. And so what did I leave out of that introduction? What are you all about? What makes you stand out?
You encapsulated it. I'm about making change. I'm about making a difference in the world. I started that just before we started. I actually relayed that to you just before we started the podcast. My whole position is about how can I show up in the world each and every day with impact, with value, where I can help people as I'm helping myself to realize who they are and why they're here. So it sounds cliche, but it's not, because I actually stand by that. So it's almost automatic for me to go right into helping people, like whatever it takes to help people. And even in everything that I'm doing, I'm always incorporating, as you mentioned, my brand, Get Reeducated. So my name is Reggie, and it's about Reggie's education. So it has a nice spin to it. I actually didn't create that name. My friend, he knows that I'm always, teaching and helping. And so one day we're talking, and I was about to start my little kind of introduction into whatever I was about to say. He's like, "Oh, go out there and reeducate them." And then I just spun that into Get Reeducated. So
That's awesome. So it's time for some education for all of us. And so where do you think people are stuck? There's all this like negativity in the world and negative self-talk, and it can sometimes take years to get out of that funk, or sometimes we have to, realign our priorities or get rid of some of those people that are holding us back, and it can be painful. But I mean, what do you see? Where are the young kids hurt these days?
I wouldn't say it's just the young kids. I would say it's a lot of us. And I'm not going to just paint the picture like everyone's totally in shambles and hurting and not, at a place where they can't do anything, can't function. However, there is a lot of unrest, a lot of where you might talk to or spoke to negativity. There are some things that people need to rework in terms of their mindsets. So a lot of that is just sort of undoing a lot of what you've been taught and then reprogramming or taking the program away so that you can actually then reveal what it is that you came into the world with. And once you get back to that, because as I say, you came into the world fine and you try to define yourself, right? You don't need to define yourself. And the definitions of defining yourself has to do with putting labels on yourself, putting yourself in groups and buckets and boxes and all this sort of thing. And a lot of times when you do that, you sort of like no longer know who you are because you're trying to identify with something that you've been introduced to that you weren't necessarily in that particular, arena or in that particular situation prior. So if we remove that, we can get back to our whole self. Like, just who are we? We are here, people that came in onto the planet, into our, parents, the mom's womb, and came out, but you already given everything you needed. So we're trying to basically remove some of the scripts and things that are playing on in people's heads and get them back to the realization of who they are.
Yeah, reconfigure, of course. And I can definitely see how some labels might help, right? If you say, well, I'm an athlete, I'm a hard worker, I'm a genius, then those are all good things. But I can definitely understand being caught up with the wrong crowd, or just like beating yourself up or telling yourself these nasty things. And that's no way to live a life, is it? That just sounds like a miserable path to be on. But we're living in this day and age where you can change the future, you can do something different. And I'm really curious about you, Mr. Reggie, and where you've come from and how you've gotten here. So, like, what have your own personal experiences been like? What led you to get this amazing message?
For me, it's always been a path for many years since I was really young of just sort of exploration, knowing at least in part who I was, but at the same time, I had also been given certain instruction that might have kind of taken me off course a bit. But I always knew that there was more, and it wasn't like I was going through this complete struggle. But I did have my particular, the growing pains and things of that nature, and particular family dynamics. Some levels of trauma, as a lot of us get introduced to these things. but I knew that there was more. I knew there was more. I knew there was more. So as I went along, the things that kind of came about for me is, I just sort of like kind of went about it like searching, right? Searching for answers, searching for the truth. And I always ask for at some point the truth. What is the truth? So that I can realize that in my everyday living. And so as I continued on, it would be books that come to you or came to me, whether conversations, people, friends, foes, whatever it might have been. And all of those people and all of those situations and all those things that I was introduced to helped me to formulate my own understanding and realization of what I am and what, in a sense, we are, and really it came down to me understanding, some level of purpose. For me, my purpose being to introduce people to themselves, if you will. And really that goes down to, how do you get to yourself? Well, you got to kind of dig into yourself. A lot of it is just sitting with yourself. A lot of it is the pausing, removing the distractions and things that are in the way. A lot of what we have today is the social medias and things like that. So for me, it was like, let me take some time whilst I was around people, and I was popular enough, but at the same time, it was like I was both some level of extroverted and introverted, and the introverted side of me allowed me to come back to myself, sit with myself, and find out who I was. And that's kind of where we were able to get to where I am now. The
And I
short
think,
version of it.
yeah, and I think it can be very relatable, this idea of like, I have to have noise around me constantly, right? I have to have the TV going. Did I drive away from home and left my phone at home? I have to go back and get it, right? I have to have music playing. And this idea of just sitting with yourself, experiencing yourself, rediscovering yourself, getting back to that inner self, it's powerful, but it's also simple and it's also scary. And so my understanding is that, so you have this book of quotes, right? And then like quotes, and then you kind of unpack and analyze them.
That is the short of it. So I do a lot of introspection as I kind of introduce myself. It sounds like, yeah, well, this guy sounds like he does a lot of work on himself, which is a lot of what I do. And, all along the way, and part of my mission in delivering to people some version of how I could help in this process. This is a portion of it, or one way. The first introduction of my way in this book is giving them little nuggets that they can work with, right? So the quotes were something that I started writing several years ago. Prior, I was actually sending out other people's quotes, actually taking other people's quotes and just sort of sharing them with people. A host of people, friends, family, and others, and just sort of sending them out every day for years. And then I started down a path when one of my friends said, well, why don't you you're sending out some really good quotes of like how people can help themselves and shape their lives and kind of grow and transform. Why don't you go dig deep into yourself and create your own quotes? Naturally, that was the next kind of like transition, because, I have enough in me that I can also share and create. So I started down that path. These are 50 of several hundred quotes, at least, that I have. And they're essentially just little nuggets that you can take, as I mentioned. And, for example, you are a leader. I hope you follow what I'm saying, right? What does that mean? Well, it sounds like you say leader, but then follow. But what I'm saying is, like, I'm stating you're a leader. If you follow what I'm saying, it's to sort of say like, well, wait a minute. I am like capable of like, leading. And then I kind of go into what that means. There's always someone looking after what you're doing each and every day. If you understand that, you realize like I have this sort of like responsibility to show up in the world, be careful what I'm saying, be careful what I'm doing, because I have influence on others, right? So then that's sort of like the intro into it. Then I go to what the short lesson of that is, and each and every quote. And after that, I give a takeaway. Now that you know that you're a leader, each and every day, your responsibility is to make sure that, kind of not repeating what I said, but just something to kind of give that takeaway. And then the last part of each quote or in each section is a reflections. So quote, what the quote means, a short lesson, and then the takeaway. And then the last part is the reflection, so that you can stop and kind of write your own notes and kind of get a sense of like what this really means to you and how you can unpack it and how it can be the thing that shows up in your life.
Very cool. So quote, reflection, lesson, takeaway. And I like that format, right? Because you can kind of see, well, what catches you and what is memorable. But then we've all seen the like quotes on social media by like, Abraham Lincoln and Confucius. And then you say, well, if I'm left with just the quote, that's catchy, but it doesn't lead me anywhere. So I like how you then say, well, here's how you can then apply it to your own life. And especially that example that you gave of leadership and setting a good example, and helping others and being a force for good in the world, not a force for bad. And so you've figured out a lot in life and you've passed on a lot, but is there anything that really like hit you hard? Because we've all been through these kind of, big shifts in life. Like what has really just blown your mind as far as the big shifts?
The big shifts, I mean, for me, it's been just realization and the fact that, the things that I'm capable of doing, or we're all capable of doing. Because, I mean, maybe you say, can I speak for everyone? But there's a sort of baseline thing within us that we know we have the ability to do a lot of things or all things. And what I realize is that in my travels and in my journeys, that I've been able to realize that, yes, as I've picked at least one thing that maybe it was like something that I felt was like impossible, really not impossible, but impossible in the sense of how we say it. And then, you kind of go about like that process of like doing that thing. And once you do that, you start to kind of realize like, we can actually, or at least I know I can do anything, right? Because where we think that you need to do everything, I mean, we'll say like everything's possible, but it doesn't mean you have to do everything. You pick a thing. It's just sort of like the way you go about experimenting, right? You don't do everything. You pick one thing that you, in this case, thought was impossible, and then you get it done, and then that's the thing that helps you to understand, in a sense, that things and everything is possible. So for me, it's come to coming through those stages of growth, and just other things along the lines of that that's helped me to realize who I am, what I'm capable of, and not just this thing that's like internal where we're sitting on this statement. It's like a cliche. Anything's possible, but really putting it to work, putting it in action, so I can make it manifest, or so that it manifests, and then I can actually like kind of run with that, and that's strength and that's power that you can actually live with.
Yeah, that's powerful. It makes sense how we have these beliefs that are stuck in us, and beliefs can help us to stay consistent and stay with what we're doing, but they can also hold us back, can't we? If we think that we can't accomplish these things, if I can't go back to school, I can't finish college, can't get that job, can't figure out that career, can't. But then you think of there's these times in human history when we sent people to the moon, right? When someone ran a 4 minute mile, all these amazing accomplishments have happened. And so as far as like what you've accomplished, what you've done, what you've seen, like what is possible? What do you have to be proud of?
I mean, I have a lot to be proud of, coming from, for me, inner city, New York City, going through the trials and tribulations of that, growing up as in a single parent household. And then from there, just my mom, who I grew up with was basically all about education, education, education. Makes sense why I'm doing education, but education, but not only just specifically formal education, but self-education. Because the formal education, there's a guy that I listened to who passed away, was a motivational speaker slash businessman, phenomenal guy named Jim Rohn. And he said,
Oh,
formal education will make you a living, self-education will make you rich. And he didn't just mean rich in the sense of monetarily, because yeah, that's one form. But if you constantly work on yourself, you can realize and do anything. So for me, it was this constant educating of myself, digging, researching, looking into many different things that were out there, getting to a place where just a lot of books that I read, which ultimately just the things that I learned helped me to get into very good schools, which I've gone to the top universities and that type of thing, and then I work in a real prestigious, pretty worldwide company. But just realizing that you can do this, but what does it take to do it? Well, for me, it's doing the work, and I really am strong about, or really adamant about doing the work, and the work is just showing up every day. So once I realized like what it took, I realized I had to be a level of discipline, I had to be a level of committed, had to be a level of serious in what I was doing, because ultimately I want to make an impression, and my impression is such that, especially even coming down to this book, once getting to that point, because that was also a thing I wanted to do, was write a book. And there are other books inside of me, and I eventually said, okay, let's get this out. And I was kind of pressed and pushed to get it out. So, now it's like that's like a big milestone, because as many books as people have written, there are many more people who don't write a book. For every
right.
100 people, maybe fewer than two people write a book. It's definitely less than that. It's like less than 1% of the world, right? So it's a
Oh yeah.
fraction of percent. So this is a big deal. So as for me, it's like doing these things and realizing what's, and then saying, because I did that, everything I can do is possible. So, I just like picking stuff and just keep going about doing those things and making it, something that shows up in the world. And then I can have that, something behind me that helps me to show other people what's possible, especially as people believe in what you're saying and what you're doing and who you are and have a respect for you. It allows me to have that message, or allow me to show up with a message that's actually going to be something that people can, take to heart.
Oh yeah, and so you're saying it's good to get educated, right? To always be learning and keeping the mind flexible and fresh, because you figure if someone out there has just written a book, any book, right? They've gone through just so much effort, right? It's a lot of work to write a book, as you know. You have to get all the words right, and it's even just to get attention on it. There's a lot involved, and you figure, you mentioned Jim Rohn. I think Jim Rohn says that you are who you surround yourself with, right? You're the average of the 5 people that are around you the most. And so if you're around people that are not excited about life, who are just negative, who don't like your ideas, well, then you'll be dragged down with them. But the good news is that we have all this human history, all these centuries of what's been written and what people have thought of and what's survived the test of time, right? You got your Jim Rohn, your Earl Nightingale, your Napoleon Hill, you got all these good people that just said some amazing things. And so you say, well, you can accomplish these things, but there is a price to pay, isn't there? You need to do some hard work and have this discipline. And it has me really curious about just like what you've overcome. Like you say that you've gone from inner city and single parent household and all that sort of stuff. But as far as like the inner turmoil, right? The motivation, the emotions, like the last 5 or 10 years, what have you really struggled with?
Well, a lot of it was the undoing, as I talked about, removing the scripts and removing those types of things that are playing in your head. So like whether some levels of trauma, levels of unrest, in the sense of where, growing up in the inner city, it's a lot. There's a lot of things that are going on there that are pretty tough, right? So what kept me away from that, thankfully, was the education. But I still had the markings of that on me, right? Just because, there's a lot of energy that's not all right directed in the right place. And, you're having to kind of like navigate that, right? And that's a lot for a young child to have to navigate. And also, and the dynamic in the family, as I mentioned, and just, the trials that my mom had to deal with trying to raise the 6 kids that she had. So there was a lot of this, like, energy in the household, which, wasn't always the most positive. I mean, like, it was positivity, but then it was also, it's this, the tough, this tough grind of living. So for me, I had to like navigate that, as I mentioned, and going through. So that was early on, but then later on, as we say, through the last several years, was really me like taking my time to actually put in the work to remove a lot of whatever was like maybe still playing in my head, to really like put in the work. And as we mentioned, a couple people, Jim Rohn, and I've listened to all these like Earl Nightingales and, Jim Rohn, the Napoleon Hills, the Tony Robbins. I could go down the list. There's a guy, Stuart Wilde. I could go all the way through so many people, thousands and thousands of hours of audios and tons of books I've read, and then audio books as well. So it was a lot of just going through and working through, making sure that like all the stuff that might have been in my head at some point, I needed to quiet that and get rid of it and get to a point of freedom. Because ultimately, once you get to a point of freedom, that's going to allow you to really feel like you can do anything. And that actual crystallization only really just happened within the last so many months, just before I did what's called Vipassana, which is a 10-day silent meditation. Well, at least you can do 10 days in the beginning. You have to start with 10 days. You can do 20 days, 30 days. So just before I went and did Vipassana, silent meditation, sitting in a temple, a Buddhist temple out in Massachusetts, I had actually started feeling this like level of freedom, where I was actually being pointed to movies and different things that were related to freedom. And I went to see it kind of got a direction to go see the play Aladdin. Aladdin was all about freedom. I got the whole sort of download on that. So, that was work though. There was a lot of affirmations. It was a lot of journaling. It was a lot of, and it's still stuff that I do. So a lot of affirmations, journaling, a lot of praying positivity, self-talk. That was good. Undoing the other stuff. So now I'm at the point where once I kept on that, because I was able to get the direction along the way. Again, everything that I just stated. that now my life is all about positivity. And I don't, you don't hear me say negative stuff. You don't hear me say, I can't do this, or you're no good, or whatever. It's all about, you can do this. You're great. I'm great. Everything's wonderful. Life is great. Like these types of things. Because now I've completely reprogrammed or removed the other programs. So it's like I got this program running and I'm always adding to it, as we're kind of like human computers. So I'm always adding to, who I am in a sense of new downloads and new software upgrades and such.
Oh yeah, and a lot of this is understated, right? The idea that I think the quote, like you're the man of quotes. There's like, well, some people say self-help doesn't last. Well, neither does showering. That's why we do it daily. And so I like how you listed all those tools, right? There's the affirmations, there's the meditation, there's the journaling. It's kind of like if you say, well, hey Reggie, how do I get in shape physically? And you say, well, you might have to walk, run, lift weights, eat vegetables, drink water. It's not just one thing, right? And it's all things that we've heard of, but many of us have not applied. And it's like, well, stay away from the junk food and the all the bad stuff and the sodas. And then as far as your mind, same idea, right? Don't put the bad stuff in, put the good stuff in. And so it's just such a massive topic, right? There's so much to talk about, and you have this book with all these quotes, but you're here, you're the star of the show, we're limited on time, so I want to make sure that we focus on what's important and special to you. So in this conversation we're having, Mr. Reggie, what's the missing question? What should I be asking you? I just don't know to ask you.
I guess it goes to, because I was asked like some things, some questions that could be asked or should be asked about or asked during the interview. And one of which was like, why did I write the book?
Yeah.
And, I would say that's a very important question, most probably important of any question. And the reason being because I have a desire to see the world a better place. And, we have other quotes and things that talk about, show up in the world as you like the world to be, or do the things you treat others as you like them to be, and, as you would like to be treated, all that sort of combination of stuff. So as I've done my work and realizing that, I could have these things in my life in terms of good job, good relationships, money, all the sort of good creature comforts and others. And also, most importantly, a good mindset, a good fit, like health and wellness and things like that. So I wanted to, and I desire to have it such that other people can also share in that, and as we talked about, there's a level of work that goes into it. And I know there may be the thing where people may not want to do certain work to get their body in shape, to be as positive as they need to be, because there's a lot of negative going on and they can tend to stay in there. But that's not really what I want to focus on. It's really about how can I be the person, or what way can I be a contributor to making things as best as they can be. So one of the ways in which for me to do that was to offer a book. And this is my first introduction. There's plenty more, as I mentioned, there are other books and things inside of me, but this would be like for me the launching pad to help make a difference in the world. And that's very important to me because I want to see as many people live as fruitfully, as positively, as healthily, as happily as possible. Obviously, knowing that most of it is going to rely on them doing what they need to do. But my thing is plant a seed, right? As many seeds as I can plant. So this book is in essence a seed, even though it seems like it's one book or one thing, but it's really not, because my message then gets disseminated to others. Because if someone takes my book, they interpret what I say, that's actually them helping to reseed the population with this type of positive information, or this type of material that I know is going to help people, because it's me, it's part of my life, and I know how I live. And I know just this portion of me is enough, even as I have many, many more things to offer. I've read the book. It's my book, came out of me. I can say decidedly and definitively that there's enough in there that can impact people in the most powerful and profound ways.
Yes, and we've all experienced that, right? We've all at some point read a little bit of a book and said, oh my gosh, that changed my life. Or you got that little bit of advice or encouragement from a mentor, and it just had that ripple effect. It helped your life, and then you pass it on to others. And that's just a great goal that you're at. They say that, once the mind is expanded, it can't go back to where it was. Once people know what's possible and what they can do. And so we've been speaking with Mr. Reggie Hilliard, who is a mindset strategist. He's a transformational thought leader. He's the visionary force behind Get Regicated. And the book we've been speaking about is called 50 to 100, Infinity Within, 50 quotes, 100% achievement, endless potential. And before we send people off to that book, Mr. Reggie, this idea of your infinity within, what does that mean practically? What's that all about?
It goes back to, I said a quote earlier, you came into the world fine, right? And you didn't try to define yourself. Definitions are, and that's, if you even know the words, the prefix D means to kind of diminish, right? So fine, you have everything in you, which is everything in you, everything, because you're made from all things on earth and beyond, right? But now you start to define, you start to put yourself in categories that then says you're only this, right?
Hmm.
And it's okay to some degree, you want to be associated to different groups and different, organizations, things like that. Yeah, we get that. But don't just think of yourself as that, because now you say, I'm this and I'm no longer that. But in essence, you're everything, right? Because you can then come out of one group and go to another group, which then means what? You were this and that, but that means you could be both, because you don't have to segregate yourself in that way. So my thing with Infinity Within is to say, everything is available to you. Everything is a possibility for you. You can do all things once you realize that, once you're able to access the truth of who you are and what's part and what there is, everything can be something that you can, not to say you'll do everything in life, but just that if you were to take on a particular thing, there's no reason why you can do it. So my whole thing with that is is getting somewhere to the place, getting people to the place of removing the limitations that they may be holding on to, that then allows them to expand into, whatever they choose to expand into. Very important, because the more you do in a sense of be in your expansive state, the more you show up in life, and the more possibilities and creation and things that you see come out of that, which could be a benefit to those around you.
Of course, dissolving those limiting beliefs, right? It's talked about a lot in self-help, these things that they hold us back. You might even not realize it or where it came from, and no one said it would be easy to break through, but we have to deconstruct reality sometimes, right? And examine, well, what's the evidence why this is true, and can I tell myself a different story? And we need this outside advice to break out of our own loops, our own thinking, such as this amazing book that we have in front of us by Reggie Hilliard, 50 to 100, Infinity Within, 50 quotes, 100% achievement, endless potential. So people can find your book on Amazon. They can search Reggie, last name Hilliard. But we want people to go to this website, from 50-100.com, to find out about you as an author, check out the book, and so much more. And so what do you think people should be doing as far as a next step after listening to this podcast? There's the book, there's the website. What should someone do if they say, oh my gosh, Reggie motivated and inspired me, but I don't want to just stop here? What should they do now?
Well, I could say you can reach out to me, because I'm always available. So one way in which to reach out to me is through, and one of the probably best ways is through my Instagram. As we talked about, my platform being Get Regicated, which I'm working on trademarking the whole bit. Eventually that'll be even broader. But the not the website, but the Instagram profile is Get Regicated. So REGUCATED. So that's like Reggie's education, GETREGUCATED. You can always DM me there, ask any questions. I'm always willing to help people. I'm very responsive, and that would be one way in which to kind of like build upon, or a next step. Be a next step for anyone that actually goes through and reads the book, or reads about me on the website and wants to ask any questions, because we only are doing but so much. As we talked about this being a 20 plus minute interview, there's so much more to unpack, so much more that we can talk about, and so much more to learn, and in ways in which we can grow, so that we can show up the way we're meant to show up in this life.
Very nice. And it's so important to fill even that social media feed with good advice, with positivity. And so you go to Instagram.com/getregicated, and you follow that, because you're probably following a bunch of garbage and noise on social media anyway. So why not replace that with some quotes, with some ideas, with just these better thoughts, so that way we can step boldly into a life of purpose, power, and infinite possibilities. So there's Get Regicated on Instagram, and we also want you to go to from50-100.com to find this book, 50 to 100, Infinity Within. It's a powerful manifesto for those ready to break limits and embrace their highest potential. It's got 50 powerful quotes, each paired with actionable lessons and thoughtful reflections. It's a structured yet flexible path toward personal growth, clarity, and fulfillment. That's from 50-100.com. And before I let you go, Mr. Reggie, as we're checking out this book on Amazon, it's time for the scary part of the podcast where I try to stump you. I try to put you on the spot by asking you about a fun quote or lesson that has served you in life. And I know you have so many, you have a whole book of them, but as far as a conversation capper for you and me, what do you think is an appropriate quote or lesson for us?
Ultimately, just show up in life the best way that they can. So this is bring forth your best, unmatched and complete, and witness the finest outcome that you'll ever meet, right? So if you bring forth whoever it is that you are and your authenticity, your true self, and people use terms like best version of yourself, but the reality is yourself is your best version. So it's kind of like extra words. But if you just show up who you are, unadulterated, remove the noise, remove the stuff that people tell you you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to do. And that's not as simple as it sounds, because again, we talked about having to remove a lot of the scripts and things that people have in them, things that they're told. But I'm just sharing, if you were to show up once at some point as your best, that's a good thing, right? So bring forth your best, unmatched and complete, and witness the finest outcome that you'll ever meet. So
I agree. That's amazing. Just show up. And the first step to getting that confidence to show up is check out this book. It's called 50 to 100, Infinity Within, 50 Quotes, 100% Achievement, Endless Potential. It's by Reggie Hilliard. Each chapter invites you to commit to your dreams, cultivate self-belief, harness gratitude, joy, authenticity, develop unstoppable habits, and most importantly, empower others while elevating yourself to new heights. Mr. Reggie Hilliard on Amazon, but also from 50-100.com. It's been so exciting speaking with you, Mr. Reggie, getting this influx of positivity, new ideas. Thanks for being here. Thanks for helping us out.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, and much love and success to everyone. And please buy my book, or at least come and reach out to me and let's have a conversation. I'm open, I'm available, and I wish the best for everyone.
Very nice. Get Regicated on Instagram. We'll see you there.